In the scorching heat of Afghanistan's Helmand province, where the Taliban controlled every shadow and death lurked behind every rock, the male Marines of Bravo Company had learned to respect one unshakable truth. When bullets started flying and their lives hung by a thread, there was only one person they trusted to bring them home alive. She was barely 5 feet tall, weighed less than most of their gear packs, and could put a bullet through a playing card at distances that made grown men weep with relief. While her fellow Marines hesitated at impossible shots, she never missed. Not once. Not ever. But on this particular morning, as insurgents surrounded their convoy in a deadly ambush 600 yards from safety, even she would face the ultimate test of her skills, her nerves, and her unwavering commitment to leave no Marine behind. What happened next would either save 12 lives or end them all, and the decision rested in the steady hands of a woman who had already defied every expectation the military had ever placed on her gender. This is her story. This is the story of Corporal Maria Elena Santos, the deadliest sniper the Marine Corps never wanted to admit they needed. Maria Elena Santos never intended to become a killer. Growing up in the dusty border town of Laredo, Texas, she spent her childhood helping her grandmother tend to a small vegetable garden behind their modest house, her tiny hands carefully planting seeds that would feed their family through another hard winter. Her father worked double shifts at the meatpacking plant. Her mother cleaned houses for wealthy families on the north side of town, and Maria learned early that survival meant discipline, patience, and an unwavering focus on the task at hand. The first time she held a rifle, she was 8 years old. Her uncle Roberto, a Vietnam veteran who carried shrapnel in his left leg and nightmares in his eyes, had noticed how steady her hands were when she helped him repair his old pickup truck. While other children her age struggled to hold a screwdriver straight, Maria could thread the smallest bolts with a precision that impressed him. "Mija," he told her one Saturday afternoon, "you have the hands of a surgeon, but the eyes of a hunter." He taught her to shoot on an old bolt-action rifle that had belonged to his father, starting with targets as large as dinner plates nailed to fence posts 50 yards away. Maria discovered something remarkable about herself in those early lessons. When she looked through the iron sights, the chaos of the world disappeared. The noise from the highway, the barking dogs, even her own heartbeat seemed to fade until there was nothing left but the target, the rifle, and the moment between her exhale and the squeeze of the trigger. By age 12, Maria could hit a soda can at 200 yards with consistency that made grown men at the local shooting range shake their heads in disbelief. Her uncle entered her in youth shooting competitions across South Texas, driving his battered pickup truck from town to town while Maria collected trophy after trophy. She never boasted about her abilities, never sought attention for her achievements. The shooting was simply something she could do, like running or reading, a natural extension of who she was. But Maria's true education began in the quiet moments between competitions, when Uncle Roberto would tell her stories about his time in the military. He spoke of brotherhood forged in combat, of the weight of responsibility that came with carrying a rifle in defense of others, and of the terrible burden of taking human life. "A weapon is a tool, Mija," he would say, cleaning his rifle with the same reverence other people reserve for religious artifacts. But the person who wields it must never forget that every shot fired changes the world forever. High school brought new challenges and new dreams. Maria excelled academically, earning straight A's while working part-time at a local diner to help support her family. Her guidance counselor pushed her to apply for college scholarships, convinced that her combination of intelligence and discipline would open doors to a better life. But Maria found herself increasingly drawn to military recruitment videos she discovered online, fascinated by stories of female Marines who had broken barriers and served in combat roles previously denied to women. The September 11th attacks happened during her junior year of high school. Maria watched the towers fall on the television in her American history class, surrounded by classmates who seemed to view the tragedy as something distant and abstract. But for Maria, The images sparked something deeper, a recognition that the world was dangerous and unpredictable, and that someone had to stand guard against the darkness. That evening, she called the local Marine Corps recruitment office and asked when she could schedule an appointment to discuss enlistment. Her parents were devastated. Her father, who had worked his entire life to provide his daughter with opportunities he never had, could not understand why she would voluntarily choose a path that might lead to combat and death. Her mother wept, begging Maria to reconsider, to accept the college scholarships that would guarantee her safety and success. But Maria's mind was made up. She had found her calling, and no amount of family pressure could shake her resolve. The recruitment process was brutal. Male recruiters, many of whom had never worked with female recruits interested in combat positions, subjected Maria to physical and mental tests designed to discourage her from pursuing military service. They made her run longer distances, carry heavier weights, and demonstrate skills that far exceeded the requirements for male recruits. Maria endured every challenge without complaint, driven by an inner fire that burned brighter with each obstacle placed in her path. Basic training at Parris Island was everything the recruiters had warned her it would be, and worse. The physical demands pushed her body beyond limits she thought possible. The mental pressure was constant and unrelenting, designed to break down civilian thinking and rebuild recruits as Marines. Maria learned to function on 4 hours of sleep, to maintain her weapon in sandstorms that could strip paint from metal, and to follow orders without question or hesitation. But it was during advanced infantry training that Maria truly distinguished herself. Her shooting abilities, already exceptional, reached new levels under the guidance of Marine instructors who recognized her potential. While other recruits struggled to hit targets at standard combat distances, Maria consistently achieved perfect scores at ranges that challenged experienced snipers. Her instructors began discussing specialized training opportunities, suggesting that Maria might be suitable for roles that would maximize her unique talents. The path to becoming a Marine sniper was long and grueling. Maria spent months in advanced marksmanship training, learning not just to shoot accurately, but to think like a hunter. She studied ballistics, weather patterns, and human behavior. She learned to remain motionless for hours at a time, to control her breathing and heart rate, and to calculate complex mathematical equations in her head while under extreme stress. The mental demands were as challenging as the physical ones, requiring a level of focus and discipline that eliminated all but the most dedicated candidates. But Maria thrived in this environment. Her instructors noted her ability to remain calm under pressure, her natural understanding of wind and distance, and her uncanny ability to predict human movement patterns. More importantly, they recognized her unwavering commitment to the Marine Corps values of honor, courage, and commitment. Maria never sought glory or recognition. She simply wanted to serve her country and protect her fellow Marines to the best of her abilities. The final phase of sniper training took place in the mountains of California, where recruits faced realistic combat scenarios designed to test their skills under pressure. Maria excelled in these exercises, demonstrating not only exceptional marksmanship, but also the tactical intelligence and emotional stability required for sniper operations. Her instructors began discussing deployment opportunities, suggesting that Maria might be assigned to units preparing for combat operations in Afghanistan. But even as Maria completed her training and prepared for her first deployment, she faced ongoing skepticism from some of her fellow Marines. Despite her proven abilities and exemplary service record, some male Marines struggled to accept that a woman could excel in a combat role traditionally reserved for men. Maria endured comments about her size, her gender, and her ability to perform under fire. She never responded to these challenges with anger or defensiveness. Instead, she let her performance speak for itself. The night before her deployment to Afghanistan, Maria called her Uncle Roberto from the base phone. He had followed her military career with pride and concern, understanding better than anyone else in her family the path she had chosen. "I'm scared, Uncle," she admitted for the first time since enlisting. "Not of dying, but of letting down the Marines who are counting on me." Roberto's voice was steady and reassuring across the crackling connection. "Mija, you've been preparing for this your whole life. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and remember that every shot you take might be the one that saves a life. You're not just representing yourself out there. You're representing all the women who will follow in your footsteps." As Maria hung up the phone and returned to her barracks to pack her gear, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a little girl planting seeds in her grandmother's garden to a Marine sniper preparing for combat deployment, every step had been guided by the same principles: discipline, patience, precision, and an unwavering commitment to protecting others. Tomorrow, she would find out if those principles were enough to keep her and her fellow Marines alive in one of the most dangerous places on Earth. The transport plane that would carry her to Afghanistan sat on the runway like a massive gray bird, its engines warming up in the pre-dawn darkness. Maria checked her rifle one final time, ensuring that every component was clean and properly adjusted. This weapon would be her tool, her lifeline, and possibly the difference between life and death for the Marine she would serve alongside. As she climbed aboard the aircraft, Maria Santos had no way of knowing that within 6 months, her name would be whispered with respect and all throughout the Marine Corps, and that the skills she had learned in the hills of Texas would be put to the ultimate test in the mountains of Afghanistan. The helicopter descended through the Afghan morning like a metal vulture, its rotors churning the thin mountain air as forward operating base Chapman materialized through the dust and haze below. Maria pressed her face against the small window, watching as the sprawling military installation grew larger with each passing second. Concrete barriers, razor wire, and guard towers created a fortress of American military might in the heart of Taliban territory. But even from 1,000 feet above, the base looked small and vulnerable against the vast expanse of hostile terrain that surrounded it. The heat hit her like a physical blow as she stepped off the helicopter. The Afghan sun was merciless, beating down on the flight line with an intensity that made the Texas summers of her childhood seem mild by comparison. Maria shouldered her gear and rifle case, following a stream of Marines and soldiers toward the processing area where new arrivals were assigned to their units and briefed on base procedures. The air smelled of diesel fuel, dust, and something else she couldn't quite identify, but would later learn was the distinctive odor of a war zone, a mixture of cordite, burning trash, and human fear. Bravo Company's commanding officer, Captain James Mitchell, was a 28-year-old Marine from Ohio who had already completed 2 combat deployments and earned a reputation for aggressive tactics and innovative strategies. When he first saw Maria standing in his company office, her 5-foot frame dwarfed by her enormous gear bag, he made no effort to hide his skepticism. "Santos," he said, looking over her service record, "I've heard about your shooting abilities, but this isn't a target range. Out here, the targets shoot back." Maria stood at attention, her voice steady and respectful. "Yes, sir. I understand, sir." Captain Mitchell studied her for a long moment, noting the quiet confidence in her bearing and the calluses on her hands that spoke of countless hours of training. "Your job is simple," he continued. "You keep my Marines alive. You miss a shot that cost me a man, and I'll have you reassigned to convoy escort duty so fast it'll make your head spin. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear, sir." The reality of Afghanistan hit Maria during her first patrol beyond the wire. The mountains that surrounded their operating area were a maze of ridges, valleys, and caves that provided perfect hiding spots for insurgents. Every rock outcropping could conceal a sniper. Every village might harbor Taliban fighters, and every step taken outside the relative safety of the base carried the possibility of sudden, violent death. The Marines of Bravo Company moved through this landscape with practiced caution, their eyes constantly scanning for threats, while their weapons remained ready for immediate action. Maria's first weeks in country were spent learning the rhythms of combat operations. She accompanied foot patrols through hostile villages, providing overwatch while Marine squads searched compounds and questioned villagers. Her role was to position herself at strategic locations where her rifle could cover the maximum area and provide support if the patrol came under attack. The work required patience, endurance, and absolute attention to detail, skills that Maria had been developing since childhood. The other Marines in Bravo Company watched Maria with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, a veteran of multiple combat deployments, had initially questioned her assignment to his unit. "Nothing personal, Santos," he told her after her first patrol, "but I've never served with a female sniper before. I need to know you can handle yourself when things get nasty." Maria's response was simple and direct. "Give me a chance to prove myself, Staff Sergeant. That's all I'm asking for." Her opportunity came sooner than anyone expected. 3 weeks into her deployment, Bravo Company received intelligence about a high-value Taliban commander who was reportedly hiding in a compound approximately 12 miles from their base. The mission was straightforward. Insert a small team under cover of darkness, observe the compound, and either capture the commander or confirm his location for a larger operation. Maria was assigned to provide overwatch for the mission, positioning herself on a ridgeline approximately 800 meters from the target compound. The insertion went smoothly, with the team reaching their observation point without incident. But as dawn broke over the mountains, the Marines discovered that their intelligence had been compromised. The compound was empty except for 2 elderly women and several children, and Taliban fighters were moving to surround the American position. The first shots came from multiple directions simultaneously, a carefully coordinated ambush designed to trap the Marines in a kill zone. Sergeant Williams, the team leader, immediately called for air support while his men sought cover behind a low stone wall that provided minimal protection from the incoming fire. Maria, positioned on the ridgeline above the firefight, could see muzzle flashes from at least 6 different Taliban positions scattered throughout the village below. "Santos, we need immediate fire support," came the urgent radio call from Sergeant Williams. "Multiple targets, approximately 400 to 600 meters from my position." Maria settled into her shooting position, adjusting her scope for the distance and calculating wind speed and direction. The Taliban fighters were well-trained and disciplined, moving between cover in short bursts that made them difficult targets. But Maria had been preparing for this moment her entire life, and her training took over as she identified her first target. The Taliban fighter was positioned behind a mud brick wall, exposing only his head and shoulders as he fired an AK-47 toward the trapped Marines. Maria's crosshairs settled on center mass, her breathing slowed to a steady rhythm, and her finger found the trigger. The rifle's report echoed across the valley as the .308 round covered the distance in less than a second, striking the insurgent in the chest and dropping him instantly. "One down," Maria reported calmly over the radio, already scanning for her next target. The psychological effect of accurate sniper fire on enemy forces is immediate and devastating. Taliban fighters who had been advancing confidently toward the American position suddenly found themselves exposed to a threat they could not see or effectively counter. Maria worked methodically through the enemy positions, each shot precisely placed to maximize both lethality and psychological impact. Her second target was a fighter attempting to flank the Marines from the east. Maria tracked his movement as he sprinted between buildings, leading him slightly to account for his speed and direction. The shot took him aside as he dove for cover, the impact spinning him around before he collapsed in the dust. "Two down," Maria reported, her voice maintaining the same calm professionalism that had characterized her first engagement. The Taliban fighters began to realize they were facing a skilled sniper, and their tactics shifted accordingly. Instead of exposing themselves for sustained firing positions, they began to use quick pop-up techniques, firing a few rounds before immediately seeking cover. This made Maria's job more difficult, requiring split-second timing and absolute precision. Her third target presented himself for less than 3 seconds, rising from behind a low wall to fire a rocket-propelled grenade toward the Marine position. Maria's rifle was already trained on the general area, her crosshairs settling on the man's torso as he appeared. The shot caught him in the act of firing, the RPG spiraling harmlessly into the air before exploding against a distant hillside. 3 down, RPG neutralized, Maria reported. The firefight continued for another 20 minutes, with Maria providing continuous overwatch while the trapped Marines coordinated their withdrawal to a more defensible position. By the time air support arrived in the form of Apache helicopters, Maria had eliminated 5 Taliban fighters and wounded at least 2 others. More importantly, her accurate fire had prevented the enemy from overrunning the Marine position and had bought valuable time for reinforcements to arrive. As the team returned to base, Sergeant Williams sought out Maria to thank her personally. "Santos," he said, extending his hand, "I owe you an apology. I had my doubts about serving with a female sniper, but what you did out there saved our lives. I've never seen shooting like that under combat conditions." Maria accepted the handshake with characteristic modesty. "Just doing my job, Sergeant. That's what Marines do for each other." But word of Maria's performance spread quickly through the base, and within days, her reputation began to grow throughout the unit. Marines who had initially questioned her abilities now spoke of her with respect and admiration. Her calm professionalism under fire, combined with her exceptional marksmanship, had earned her a place among the most trusted members of Bravo Company. Captain Mitchell called Maria into his office 3 days after the firefight. "Santos," he began, "I've been in the Corps for 8 years, and I've served with some outstanding Marines. What you accomplished out there was remarkable, but I need to know something. How did it feel to take human lives?" Maria considered the question carefully before responding. "Sir, I'd be lying if I said it was easy. Taking a life is never something to celebrate, even when it's necessary. But those men were trying to kill my fellow Marines, and I had the training and position to stop them. I did what I was trained to do, what I swore an oath to do." Captain Mitchell nodded approvingly. "That's the right answer, Santos. Keep that perspective, and you'll be fine out here." Over the following weeks, Maria participated in dozens of combat operations throughout Helmand Province. She provided overwatch for village searches, secured landing zones for helicopter insertions, and conducted reconnaissance missions deep in Taliban-controlled territory. With each mission, her confidence grew, and her reputation as the most reliable sniper in the battalion spread throughout the region. But Maria never allowed herself to become complacent. She spent her free time studying maps of their operating area, learning the terrain features that could provide the best shooting positions. She maintained her equipment with obsessive attention to detail, cleaning her rifle every day and checking her optics for accuracy. She also continued her physical training, recognizing that her effectiveness depended as much on her ability to reach difficult positions as it did on her marksmanship skills. The Taliban, meanwhile, had taken notice of the American sniper who was disrupting their operations with such deadly effectiveness. Intelligence reports indicated that bounties had been placed on Maria's head, and enemy fighters were specifically briefed to watch for a female sniper operating in their area. This added an extra layer of danger to every mission, but Maria refused to allow the threats to affect her performance. As her first deployment progressed, Maria began to understand the true weight of her responsibilities. She was not just representing herself or even the Marine Corps. She was proving that women could excel in combat roles that had traditionally been denied to them. Every successful mission, every life she saved, and every enemy fighter she eliminated served as evidence that gender was irrelevant when it came to protecting American lives and accomplishing military objectives. The transformation from small-town girl to combat-hardened Marine was now complete. Maria Santos had found her calling in the mountains of Afghanistan, using skills learned in the hills of Texas to protect the Marines who had become her family. But her greatest test still lay ahead, in a convoy ambush that would push her abilities to their absolute limits and cement her legacy as one of the finest snipers in Marine Corps history. The intelligence briefing that morning carried an unusual sense of urgency. Captain Mitchell stood before a map of their operational area, pointing to a red circle that marked their destination for the day's mission. "We've received credible intelligence about a Taliban weapons cache hidden in the village of Kalana," he announced to the assembled Marines of Bravo Company. The cache reportedly contains heavy weapons, including mortars and anti-aircraft missiles that could pose a serious threat to our air operations in this region. Maria listened intently as the captain outlined the mission parameters. A convoy of 4 vehicles would transport a 30-man search team to the village, where they would conduct a systematic search of suspected compounds. The mission was expected to last 6 to 8 hours, with the convoy returning to base before nightfall. Intelligence assessments indicated minimal enemy presence in the area, with local Taliban forces reportedly displaced by recent Marine operations in adjacent valleys. But something about the mission felt wrong to Maria, though she couldn't articulate exactly what was bothering her. Perhaps it was the way the intelligence officer avoided making direct eye contact during his briefing, or the fact that the proposed route took them through terrain that offered numerous ambush opportunities. Whatever the reason, Maria found herself double-checking her equipment with extra care, ensuring that every piece of gear was properly secured and ready for immediate use. The convoy consisted of 2 armored Humvees in front and rear positions, with 2 larger mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles carrying the bulk of the search team. Maria was assigned to the lead vehicle, where her rifle would be immediately available if the convoy encountered resistance. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez commanded the vehicle, with Corporal Jackson serving as driver and Lance Corporal Murphy manning the mounted machine gun. The morning departure proceeded without incident. The convoy rolled through the main gate of Forward Operating Base Chapman at 0600 hours, heading southwest toward the target village along a route that had been traveled safely dozens of times before. The Afghan countryside spread out before them in the early morning light, a landscape of rugged beauty that masked its lethal potential beneath layers of ancient rock and persistent danger. For the first hour of movement, everything appeared normal. The convoy maintained proper spacing between vehicles, radio communications remained clear, and the Marines remained alert but not alarmed. Local Afghan civilians went about their daily routines, tending livestock and working in small fields that dotted the valley floor. Children waved at the passing vehicles with the casual familiarity that came from regular American patrols through their area. But Maria noticed subtle changes in the civilian population as they moved deeper into Taliban territory. The number of people visible along the roadside gradually decreased, and those who remained avoided making eye contact with the convoy. Shops that should have been busy with morning customers appeared closed and shuttered. Most tellingly, the children who usually followed American convoys for candy and small gifts were nowhere to be seen. Staff Sergeant, Maria called over the vehicle's intercom system, "Something doesn't feel right about this area. The civilian pattern is all wrong for this time of day." Rodriguez had been having similar thoughts. As a veteran of multiple combat deployments, he had developed an instinct for recognizing danger signs that went beyond standard tactical indicators. "I see it too, Santos. Stay sharp and keep your rifle ready." The ambush began exactly as Maria had feared it would, with devastating suddenness and overwhelming firepower. The convoy was moving through a narrow valley when the first rocket-propelled grenade streaked across the roadway, missing the lead vehicle by less than 10 feet before exploding against the rocky slope beyond. The blast was immediately followed by a storm of automatic weapons fire from concealed positions on both sides of the valley, catching the Marines in a perfectly orchestrated kill zone. Corporal Jackson reacted instantly, accelerating the lead vehicle toward a cluster of large boulders that offered the only available cover. Behind them, the other 3 vehicles were taking heavy fire, their occupants scrambling to return effective counterfire while maneuvering to more defensible positions. The Taliban had chosen their ambush site perfectly, creating a situation where the Marines were exposed on open ground while their attackers remained hidden among the rocks and vegetation of the valley walls. Contact left and right. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez shouted into his radio, calling in the ambush to base operations. Multiple enemy positions. We need immediate air support and quick reaction force deployment. Maria was already moving, grabbing her rifle and additional ammunition while scanning the surrounding terrain for a suitable shooting position. The Humvee provided some protection from small arms fire, but it also limited her ability to engage targets effectively. She needed elevation and clear fields of fire if she was going to provide meaningful support to the embattled convoy. "Santos, where are you going?" Rodriguez called out as Maria prepared to exit the vehicle. "There's a rock outcropping about 200 meters to our 11 o'clock, Maria replied, pointing to a pile of boulders that would provide both cover and an elevated shooting position. "From there, I can cover the entire ambush zone and start taking out their shooters." Rodriguez understood immediately. In conventional tactics, the sniper would remain with the main force to provide close support. But this situation demanded unconventional thinking, and Maria's plan offered the best chance of breaking up the ambush before it could achieve its objective of destroying the convoy. "Go," he ordered. "We'll provide covering fire." The sprint to the rock outcropping was the longest 200 meters of Maria's life. Taliban bullets kicked up small geysers of dust around her feet as she ran, the distinctive crack of supersonic rounds passing close to her head, serving as a constant reminder of her mortality. Behind her, the Marines of Bravo Company provided suppressing fire, their weapons chattering steadily as they tried to keep enemy heads down long enough for Maria to reach her destination. She dove behind a largest boulder just as a burst of automatic fire stitched across the ground where she had been running. Her heart was pounding, and sweat was already beginning to soak through her uniform in the intense Afghan heat. But her hands remained steady as she extended the bipod legs of her rifle and settled into a stable shooting position. The scope revealed a scene of carefully orchestrated chaos. Taliban fighters were positioned throughout the rocky valley walls, using natural cover and prepared fighting positions to maintain their attack on the trapped convoy. Maria counted at least 12 muzzle flashes, indicating a force much larger than the minimal enemy presence that intelligence had predicted. This wasn't a chance encounter with a small Taliban patrol. This was a deliberately planned ambush using substantial enemy forces. Maria's first target was a Taliban machine gunner who had set up his weapon on a small ledge approximately 400 meters away. His position allowed him to rake the entire convoy with sustained fire, keeping the Marines pinned down while other fighters maneuvered for better attacking positions. Through her scope, Maria could see the gunner's face clearly, noting his careful attention to his weapon and his professional approach to the task of killing Americans. The crosshairs settled on center mass, and Maria controlled her breathing as she had been taught. The familiar sequence of exhale, pause, squeeze played out exactly as it had thousands of times before on training ranges. But this time, a human life hung in the balance of her precision. The rifle's report echoed off the valley walls, and the Taliban machine gunner slumped forward over his weapon, his sustained fire abruptly silenced. "One down," Maria reported over her radio, already searching for her next target. The psychological effect of losing their machine gunner was immediately apparent among the Taliban fighters. Their rate of fire decreased noticeably as they began looking around nervously, trying to locate the sniper who had eliminated one of their key weapons. This gave the Marines and the convoy a brief respite that they used to improve their positions and coordinate their defensive fire. Maria's second target was an insurgent armed with an RPG who was attempting to get close enough to the convoy to ensure a direct hit on one of the vehicles. He was moving from rock to rock in short rushes, using natural terrain features to mask his approach. Maria tracked his movement, anticipating his next position based on the available cover. When he appeared again, rising from behind a large boulder to acquire a target, Maria was ready. The shot took him high in the chest, spinning him around and sending his rocket-propelled grenade launcher clattering down the rocky slope. The warhead exploded harmlessly against the valley wall, its destructive potential neutralized by Maria's precise marksmanship. 2 down, RPG neutralized, Maria reported. But even as she eliminated individual targets, Maria could see that the Taliban fighters were beginning to adapt to the presence of a sniper. They were moving more carefully, exposing themselves for shorter periods, and using smoke grenades to obscure her vision. The enemy commander was clearly experienced and intelligent, adjusting his tactics in real time to counter the American sniper's effectiveness. The situation became more urgent when Maria observed a group of Taliban fighters attempting to flank the convoy from the north. If they succeeded in reaching the high ground behind the Marines, they would be able to attack from multiple directions simultaneously, creating a situation that could quickly become untenable. The convoy's defensive perimeter was already stretched thin, and an attack from behind could collapse their entire position. Maria shifted her aim to engage the flanking force, but the distance was extreme, approximately 700 meters across broken terrain with variable wind conditions. At that range, environmental factors became critically important, and Maria had to account for wind speed, air density, and even the rotation of the Earth itself. These were shots that challenged the limits of her equipment and abilities. The lead Taliban fighter in the flanking group was moving along a ridgeline, occasionally exposing himself as he coordinated the movement of his men. Maria studied the terrain between her position and the target, noting wind indicators like blowing dust and vegetation movement. She made minute adjustments to her scope, accounting for the increased distance and environmental conditions. The shot required perfect timing and absolute precision. Maria waited until the Taliban fighter paused to signal his men, presenting a clear target for approximately 3 seconds. Her crosshairs settled on his torso. She controlled her breathing, and her finger found the trigger. The bullet's flight time at that range was nearly a full second, during which the target could easily move and cause a complete miss. But Maria's calculations were perfect. The round struck the Taliban commander center mass, dropping him instantly and throwing his flanking maneuver into immediate confusion. The other fighters in his group scattered, seeking cover and abandoning their coordinated attack on the convoy's rear. Flanking force neutralized, Maria reported, her voice betraying none of the stress and concentration required for such an extreme-range engagement. Air support finally arrived in the form of 2 Apache helicopters, their distinctive rotor noise echoing off the valley walls as they approached the ambush site. But even with close air support available, the Taliban fighters continued their attack, some of them firing anti-aircraft missiles that forced the helicopters to maintain safe distances and limited their ability to provide immediate assistance. Maria continued working through the enemy positions, methodically eliminating targets and disrupting the Taliban's coordinated attack. Each shot was precisely placed to maximize both lethality and psychological impact, creating uncertainty and fear among the surviving insurgents. By the time the Quick Reaction Force arrived 30 minutes later, Maria had eliminated 8 Taliban fighters and wounded several others, effectively breaking up an ambush that could have resulted in significant Marine casualties. As the Quick Reaction Force secured the area and the convoy prepared to return to base, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached Maria's position. "Santos," he said, extending his hand, "I've been in the Corps for 12 years, and I've never seen shooting like that. You saved this convoy, and probably saved a dozen Marine lives." Maria accepted the handshake with her characteristic modesty. "Just doing my job, Staff Sergeant. That's what Marines do." But as she cleaned her rifle and prepared for the journey back to base, Maria knew that something fundamental had changed. She had proven herself beyond any doubt, demonstrating skills and courage that placed her among the elite of Marine snipers. More importantly, she had lived up to the trust placed in her by her fellow Marines, using her unique abilities to protect the men who had become her brothers. The convoy's return to Forward Operating Base Chapman was met with cheers and congratulations from Marines who had monitored the radio traffic during the ambush. Word of Maria's performance spread quickly through the base, adding another chapter to a reputation that was becoming legendary throughout the region. But for Maria, the greatest reward was the knowledge that 12 Marines were returning safely to their families because she had been there when they needed her most. The call came at 0300 hours on a cold November morning, piercing through the relative quiet of Forward Operating Base Chapman with the urgent electronic tone that every Marine had learned to fear. Maria was already awake, having spent the previous 2 hours unable to sleep due to a combination of pre-mission nerves and the persistent ache in her shoulders from carrying her gear during the previous day's patrol. She rolled out of her narrow bunk and reached for her equipment without hesitation, knowing that middle-of-the-night alerts typically meant that Marines were in immediate danger somewhere in their area of operations. Captain Mitchell's voice crackled over the base communication system, calling all members of Bravo Company to report immediately for emergency briefing. Maria grabbed her rifle, body armor, and ammunition, moving with the practiced efficiency that came from months of combat operations. Around her, other Marines were performing the same routine, their movements quick and purposeful despite having been awakened from deep sleep. The briefing room was packed with Marines from multiple units, their faces reflecting a mixture of concern and determination as they waited for mission details. Captain Mitchell stood at the front of the room, flanked by intelligence officers and communications personnel whose presence indicated the serious nature of whatever situation had developed. Behind them, a large map displayed the rugged terrain of Helmand Province, with red markers indicating known Taliban positions and blue markers showing friendly forces. "Listen up," Captain Mitchell began, his voice carrying the weight of command and the urgency of the situation. Approximately 2 hours ago, a convoy from Alpha Company was ambushed while returning from a humanitarian aid mission in the village of Musakala. The convoy is trapped in a valley approximately 15 kilometers from our position, taking heavy fire from multiple enemy positions. Air support is limited due to weather conditions, and the Quick Reaction Force from Forward Operating Base Dwyer is dealing with their own situation and cannot provide immediate assistance. Maria felt her stomach tighten as she studied the map, recognizing the terrain features of the area where Alpha Company was trapped. The valley was a natural kill zone, surrounded by high ridges that provided excellent positions for enemy forces while leaving limited escape routes for anyone caught in the low ground. If the Taliban had planned this ambush carefully, Alpha Company could be in serious trouble. The convoy consists of 4 vehicles and approximately 20 Marines, Captain Mitchell continued. Initial reports indicate at least 3 wounded, with enemy forces controlling the high ground on both sides of the valley. Our mission is to provide immediate relief, break up the ambush, and extract Alpha Company safely. Time is critical because intelligence suggests that additional Taliban forces are moving toward the area to reinforce the ambush. The mission parameters were straightforward, but extremely dangerous. Bravo Company would approach the ambush site from the north, using a route that would bring them to within approximately 600 meters of Alpha Company's position. From there, they would need to assault the Taliban positions on the high ground while providing cover for Alpha Company's withdrawal. The key to success would be eliminating the enemy's tactical advantage through superior firepower and coordinated movement. Maria was assigned to the advance team that would establish overwatch positions before the main assault began. Her role was to provide sniper support for the operation, identifying and eliminating key enemy targets while the rest of Bravo Company maneuvered into position. The mission would require her to operate at maximum range in challenging conditions, with the lives of 20 Marines hanging in the balance of her accuracy. The helicopter insertion went smoothly despite deteriorating weather conditions that limited visibility and created turbulence throughout the flight. Maria and 5 other Marines were dropped on a ridgeline approximately 1 kilometer from the ambush site, where they would establish observation and fire support positions before the main force arrived. The insertion point had been chosen to provide maximum tactical advantage while remaining outside the immediate range of Taliban weapons. As the helicopter disappeared into the darkness, Maria and her team moved quickly toward their assigned positions. The terrain was treacherous, consisting of loose rock and steep slopes that required careful navigation even in daylight. At night, with limited visibility and the pressure of time constraints, every step carried the risk of injury or detection by enemy forces. But the Marines moved with practiced skill, using hand signals and established procedures to maintain communication while minimizing noise. Maria's assigned position was on a rocky outcropping that provided an elevated view of the entire valley where Alpha Company was trapped. The location was approximately 800 meters from the nearest Taliban positions, placing her at the extreme range of her equipment, but offering the best possible fields of fire. As she settled into her shooting position and began assembling her rifle, Maria could hear the distant sound of automatic weapons fire echoing off the valley walls. Through her scope, the scene below was one of desperate defense and coordinated attack. Alpha Company's 4 vehicles were positioned in a rough circle in the center of the valley, their occupants using the limited cover available while returning fire at Taliban positions scattered throughout the surrounding ridges. Maria counted at least 15 muzzle flashes, indicating a substantial enemy force that had clearly planned this ambush with considerable care and preparation. The trapped Marines were in a precarious situation that was deteriorating with each passing minute. Their ammunition supplies were finite, their defensive perimeter was under constant pressure, and the Taliban forces were methodically working to eliminate their ability to resist. Without immediate intervention, Alpha Company faced the possibility of being overrun by superior numbers operating from advantageous positions. Maria began her work with systematic precision, identifying the most dangerous enemy positions and prioritizing her targets based on their threat level to the trapped Marines. Her first target was a Taliban machine gunner who had established his weapon on a ridge approximately 700 meters away. The gunner's position allowed him to rake Alpha Company's defensive perimeter with sustained fire, keeping the Marines pinned down while other insurgents maneuvered for better attacking positions. The shot required careful calculation of wind speed, distance, and elevation differences. Maria observed wind indicators throughout the valley, noting the direction and intensity of air movement at different elevations. The temperature differential between the warm valley floor and the cool mountain air created thermals that could affect bullet trajectory, requiring additional compensation beyond standard ballistic calculations. Maria's crosshairs settled on the machine gunner's chest as he paused to change ammunition belts. The range was extreme, requiring absolute precision and perfect timing. She controlled her breathing, found a natural pause between heartbeats, and squeezed the trigger with steady pressure. The bullet's flight time at that distance was nearly a full second, during which any movement by the target could result in a complete miss. But Maria's calculations were perfect. The round struck the Taliban gunner's center mass, dropping him instantly and silencing his weapon. The psychological effect on the other insurgents was immediate as they realized they were facing a skilled sniper operating at extreme range. Several enemy fighters shifted their positions, seeking better cover and disrupting their coordinated attack on Alpha Company. One down, Maria reported over her radio, already scanning for her next target. Her second shot eliminated a Taliban spotter who was directing mortar fire against the trapped Marines. The spotter was positioned behind a large boulder approximately 600 meters away, occasionally exposing his head and shoulders as he communicated with his mortar team. Maria tracked his movement pattern, anticipating when he would next appear based on the timing of his previous exposures. When the spotter rose again to observe the impact of the latest mortar rounds, Maria was ready. Her crosshairs were already positioned on the spot where his head would appear, and Her shot took him in the upper chest before he could duck back into cover. The mortar fire ceased immediately as the gun crew lost their ability to observe and adjust their fire. 2 down, mortar fire neutralized, Maria reported. The main assault began as Bravo Company's vehicles approached the valley from the north. Captain Mitchell had coordinated the timing perfectly, launching his attack just as Maria's sniper fire was disrupting the Taliban's defensive positions. The combination of direct assault and precision sniper support created maximum confusion among the enemy forces, who suddenly found themselves fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously. But the Taliban fighters were experienced and well-trained, adapting quickly to the changing tactical situation. Several insurgents began moving toward Maria's position, apparently having identified the general location of the sniper who was causing such havoc among their ranks. The counter-sniper movement forced Maria to divide her attention between supporting the main assault and protecting her own position. Maria's third target was a Taliban fighter armed with a rocket-propelled grenade who was attempting to engage Bravo Company's approaching vehicles. The insurgent was positioned on a rocky ledge approximately 500 meters away, partially concealed behind natural cover that made him a challenging target. Maria had only a brief window of opportunity as the fighter rose to acquire his target and prepare to fire. The shot required split-second timing and absolute precision. Maria tracked the insurgent's movement, leading him slightly to account for his motion as he prepared to fire. Her bullet caught him in the side just as he was shouldering the RPG launcher, the impact spinning him around and sending the weapon tumbling down the rocky slope. 3 down, RPG neutralized, Maria reported. The battle continued with increasing intensity as both sides committed their full resources to achieving their objectives. Bravo Company was making progress against the Taliban positions, but the enemy's defensive preparations were proving more extensive than intelligence had indicated. Maria continued providing sniper support, eliminating key targets, and disrupting enemy communications while monitoring her own ammunition supply and watching for threats to her position. Her fourth shot eliminated a Taliban commander who was attempting to coordinate a flanking movement against Alpha Company's weakened perimeter. The commander was positioned approximately 900 meters away at the extreme range of Maria's equipment. The shot required perfect conditions and absolute precision, as any error in calculation could result in a complete miss at that distance. Maria studied the terrain between her position and the target, noting wind indicators and thermal effects that could influence bullet trajectory. The Taliban commander was moving between covered positions, exposing himself only briefly as he communicated with his subordinates. Maria waited patiently for the perfect opportunity, her crosshairs tracking the expected position where the commander would next appear. When the target presented himself, rising from behind a rock outcropping to signal his men, Maria was ready. The shot was perfect, striking the commander's center mass and eliminating a key figure in the Taliban's command structure. The loss of their commander created immediate confusion among the flanking force, disrupting their coordinated movement and buying valuable time for Alpha Company. 4 down, enemy commander eliminated, Maria reported. The arrival of air support marked the beginning of the end for the Taliban ambush. 2 Apache helicopters appeared over the valley, their 30mm cannons and Hellfire missiles providing devastating firepower against the remaining enemy positions. The combination of air support, ground assault, and precision sniper fire proved overwhelming for the Taliban forces, who began withdrawing from their positions in small groups. But Maria's most challenging shot was yet to come. A Taliban sniper had positioned himself in a cave opening approximately 1,000 meters away, using the natural concealment to engage both Alpha Company and the advancing Marines of Bravo Company. The enemy sniper was skilled and disciplined, taking carefully aimed shots before immediately withdrawing into the cave to avoid counterfire. The shot would require everything Maria had learned during her training and months of combat experience. The range was at the absolute limit of her equipment's capabilities. The target was partially concealed, and the angle required her to account for significant elevation differences. Moreover, the Taliban sniper was only exposing himself for a few seconds at a time, providing minimal opportunity for effective engagement. Maria studied the cave opening through her scope, noting the shadows and terrain features that would affect her shot placement. She calculated wind speed and direction at multiple points along the bullet's trajectory, accounting for the complex air currents that existed in the mountainous terrain. Most importantly, she had to predict the exact moment when the enemy sniper would next appear, positioning her crosshairs accordingly. The opportunity came as the Taliban sniper rose to take another shot at the Marines below. Maria's crosshairs were already positioned on the spot where his torso would appear, and her shot was released just as he became visible. The bullet covered the 1,000-meter distance in just over a second, striking the enemy sniper before he could complete his own shot. The cave fell silent, eliminating the last serious threat to the rescue operation. 5 down, enemy sniper neutralized, Maria reported, her voice carrying a note of satisfaction at having eliminated such a dangerous opponent. The extraction of Alpha Company proceeded smoothly once the Taliban positions had been neutralized. The wounded Marines were loaded onto helicopters for immediate medical evacuation, while the remaining personnel were transported to safety aboard Bravo Company's vehicles. Maria maintained overwatch throughout the extraction process, ensuring that no remaining enemy forces could interfere with the operation. As the last helicopter lifted off with the final group of rescue Marines, Captain Mitchell approached Maria's position. "Santos," he said, his voice filled with respect and admiration, "what you accomplished here today was extraordinary. 5 confirmed kills at extreme range, including an enemy sniper at 1,000 meters. You saved 20 lives today." Maria disassembled her rifle with practiced efficiency, her movements reflecting the quiet professionalism that had characterized her entire military career. "Just doing my job, sir," she replied. "That's what Marines do for each other." But as she prepared for the return journey to base, Maria knew that this mission would be remembered as the defining moment of her deployment. She had operated at the limits of human capability, demonstrating skills that placed her among the finest snipers in Marine Corps history. More importantly, she had proven that gender was irrelevant when it came to protecting American lives and accomplishing the mission. The rescue of Alpha Company became legendary within the Marine Corps, and Maria's role in the operation earned her recognition throughout the military community. But for Maria herself, the greatest satisfaction came from the knowledge that 20 Marines had returned home safely because she had been there when they needed her most. In the end, that was all that truly mattered. The morning of Maria's final mission dawned with an eerie stillness that seemed to settle over Forward Operating Base Chapman like a heavy blanket. After 8 months of combat operations in Afghanistan, Maria had developed an instinct for reading the subtle signs that indicated when something significant was about to happen. The air itself felt different, charged with the kind of tension that preceded major operations. Birds that normally called from the surrounding mountains remained silent, and even the constant background noise of base operations seemed muted and subdued. Maria sat on the edge of her narrow bunk, methodically cleaning her rifle for what she knew would be the last time in this place that had become her second home. The weapon had been her constant companion through dozens of combat operations, never failing her when lives hung in the balance. Every component was perfectly maintained, every adjustment precisely calibrated. The rifle had become an extension of herself, as familiar and reliable as her own heartbeat. The intelligence briefing that morning carried an unusual weight of significance. Colonel Harrison, the base commander, personally delivered the mission parameters to the assembled Marines of Bravo Company, his presence indicating the critical importance of their upcoming operation. Behind him, a detailed map displayed the rugged terrain of their target area, marked with red symbols that indicated one of the largest Taliban strongholds in their operational sector. Intelligence has confirmed the location of Mullah Abdul Rahman, a high-value target who has been orchestrating attacks throughout this region for the past 2 years, Colonel Harrison announced. Rahman is directly responsible for the deaths of over 30 coalition personnel and countless Afghan civilians. He's scheduled to meet with subordinate commanders at a compound in the village of Kajaki Dam at approximately 1400 hours today. Maria has studied the terrain features on the map, noting the challenging angles and extended distances that would be required for effective sniper support. The target compound was situated on high ground, surrounded by defensive positions and escape routes that would make capture extremely difficult. This was clearly a mission designed to eliminate rather than capture the target, requiring precision fire support to neutralize Rahman and his lieutenants before they could escape. This operation represents our best opportunity to eliminate a key figure in the Taliban's command structure, the colonel continued. Rahman's removal will significantly disrupt enemy operations throughout Helmand province and save countless American and Allied lives. The mission parameters are simple: locate, identify, and eliminate the target with extreme prejudice. The assault plan was ambitious and complex, involving multiple elements coordinating across difficult terrain. 2 rifle squads would approach the compound from different directions, while a heavy weapons team provided supporting fire from an overwatch position approximately 1 kilometer away. Maria was assigned to establish a sniper position on a ridgeline that would give her clear fields of fire across the entire target area. But something about the mission troubled Maria, though she couldn't articulate exactly what was bothering her. Perhaps it was the way intelligence officers avoided making direct eye contact during the briefing, or the fact that Rahman's location had been determined through sources that remained classified, even for the Marines who would risk their lives capturing him. Whatever the reason, Maria found herself paying extra attention to details that might normally escape notice. The helicopter insertion proceeded without incident, depositing Maria and her spotter, Lance Corporal Williams, on a rocky ridge approximately 800 meters from the target compound. The position offered excellent visibility across the valley below, with clear sight lines to all approaches and escape routes. Maria established her shooting position behind a cluster of large boulders that provided both concealment and protection from enemy fire. Through her scope, Maria could observe the target compound in detail. The building was larger than typical Afghan structures, constructed of reinforced concrete and surrounded by defensive walls that indicated its use as a military installation. Several vehicles were parked in a courtyard area, and armed guards were visible at various points around the perimeter. The scene appeared exactly as intelligence had predicted, suggesting that Rahman and his commanders were indeed present for their scheduled meeting. "I have eyes on the target," Maria reported over her radio, settling into her shooting position and adjusting her scope for the distance and environmental conditions. Multiple individuals visible in the compound, armed guards at perimeter positions. The first phase of the operation proceeded according to plan. The Marine rifle squads moved into position around the compound, establishing fields of fire that would prevent enemy escape while maintaining coordination with the sniper overwatch. Communications remained clear and tactical coordination was functioning smoothly. Everything indicated that the mission would achieve its objectives with minimal resistance. But as Maria observed the compound through her scope, she began to notice details that didn't match the intelligence briefings. The guards appeared to be carrying AK-47 rifles that were old and poorly maintained, hardly the quality weapons typically used by high-value Taliban commanders. Moreover, the vehicles in the courtyard showed signs of civilian use rather than military operations, with family belongings and personal items visible through their windows. "Williams," Maria called to her spotter, "take a close look at that compound. Does something seem off to you?" Lance Corporal Williams studied the target through his binoculars, examining the details that Maria had observed. After several minutes of careful observation, his expression grew troubled. "Santos, those don't look like Taliban fighters to me. The weapons are wrong, the vehicles are wrong, and I'm seeing women and children in some of those buildings." Maria's stomach dropped as she realized what they might be looking at. Instead of a Taliban command meeting, the compound appeared to house an extended Afghan family, possibly refugees or displaced civilians who had sought shelter in what they believed was a safe location. The guards were likely male family members carrying weapons for personal protection, a common practice in rural Afghanistan. "Control, this is Overwatch," Maria transmitted over a radio. "I need immediate confirmation of target identification. The compound does not match intelligence descriptions of a Taliban meeting site." The response from base operations was swift and uncompromising. "Overwatch, maintain position and prepare to engage on command. Target identification has been confirmed through multiple intelligence sources." But Maria's training and experience told her that something was fundamentally wrong with the intelligence assessment. The people she was observing through her scope were clearly civilians, not the hardened Taliban commanders that intelligence had described. Engaging this target would result in civilian casualties that violated both her moral principles and the rules of engagement that govern American military operations. "Control, I am observing women and children in the target area," Maria transmitted. "Request immediate mission abort until civilian status can be verified." The radio crackled with static before Colonel Harrison's voice came through clearly. "Overwatch, you have direct orders to engage the target upon identification. Rahman must not be allowed to escape this area." Maria found herself facing the most difficult decision of her military career. She had sworn an oath to follow orders and trust the intelligence provided by her superiors. But she had also sworn to protect innocent life and uphold the values of the Marine Corps represented. Through her scope, she could see children playing in the compound's courtyard, their laughter carrying across the valley despite the distance. "Williams," Maria said quietly, "what do you think?" Her spotter lowered his binoculars and looked directly at Maria. "Santos, I've been in the Corps for 6 years, and I've never seen intelligence this far off. Those are civilians down there, and we both know it." The assault began without sniper support as the rifle squads moved toward their final positions. Maria watched through her scope as Marines advanced on what they believed was a Taliban stronghold, their movements precise and professional despite the fact that they were about to engage innocent civilians. The responsibility for preventing a massacre rested squarely on her shoulders. "Control, this is Overwatch," Maria transmitted one final time. "I'm refusing the order to engage civilian targets. The compound contains women and children who pose no threat to American forces." The radio exploded with angry voices as base operations realized that their sniper was disobeying direct orders in the middle of a combat operation. Colonel Harrison's voice cut through the chaos with unmistakable authority and fury. "Santos, you will engage that target immediately or face court-martial for disobedience in the face of the enemy." But Maria had made her decision. She could not and would not fire on innocent civilians, regardless of the consequences to her career or freedom. Instead, she activated her emergency flare, the prearranged signal for mission abort that would recall the assault teams before they could engage the compound. "All units, this is Overwatch," Maria transmitted over the tactical frequency. "Mission abort. Repeat, mission abort. Civilian families in target compound, disengage immediately." The rifle squads responded to the abort signal with confusion but professional discipline, withdrawing from their assault positions without engaging the compound. Within minutes, the area was clear of American forces, and the Afghan families in the compound remained safely unaware of how close they had come to disaster. The helicopter extraction that followed was conducted in tense silence. Maria knew that she faced serious consequences for disobeying direct orders during a combat operation. Court-martial proceedings could result in imprisonment, dishonorable discharge, and the destruction of everything she had worked to achieve during her military career. But as she watched the compound disappear below, Maria felt no regret for her decision. The investigation that followed Maria's refusal to fire revealed that the intelligence assessment had been based on flawed information provided by a local informant who had personal grievances against the family in the compound. What intelligence officers had interpreted as a Taliban command meeting was actually a wedding celebration, with the guards being male relatives celebrating the marriage of two young people who had managed to find love despite the chaos of war. Colonel Harrison faced difficult questions about the intelligence process that had led to the near massacre of innocent civilians. The incident prompted a comprehensive review of targeting procedures and intelligence verification protocols throughout the region. Most importantly, it demonstrated the critical importance of human judgment in military operations, even when that judgment conflicted with official orders and intelligence assessments. Maria faced a formal hearing regarding her disobedience of direct orders, but the proceedings took an unexpected turn when details of the flawed intelligence became public. Instead of punishment, Maria found herself commended for preventing a civilian casualty incident that would have damaged American military reputation and potentially created new enemies among the Afghan population. The commendation ceremony took place on a sunny morning at Camp Pendleton, California, where Maria had returned following the completion of her deployment. Brigadier General Martinez, commanding officer of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, personally presented Maria with the Navy Cross, the second highest decoration for valor in the United States military. Corporal Santos, the general, announced to the assembled crowd of Marines and family members, "Your actions in Afghanistan represent the highest ideals of military service. You demonstrated not only exceptional skill as a sniper, but also the moral courage to make difficult decisions under extreme pressure. Your refusal to engage civilian targets prevented a tragic mistake and upheld the honor of the Marine Corps." Maria's parents had traveled from Laredo to attend the ceremony, their faces reflecting pride and relief at their daughter's safe return from combat. Her father, who had initially opposed her military service, now spoke with deep admiration about Maria's accomplishments and character. Her mother wept quietly as the medal was pinned to Maria's dress blue uniform, overwhelmed by gratitude that her daughter had survived her deployment and returned home safely. But for Maria, the greatest satisfaction came from letters she received from the Marines of Alpha Company, whose lives she had saved during the convoy ambush months earlier. Each letter expressed gratitude not just for her marksmanship skills, but for the dedication and professionalism she had demonstrated throughout their shared deployment. These Marines understood better than anyone else the true meaning of her service and sacrifice. Following her return to the United States, Maria was assigned to the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School at Camp Pendleton, where she became an instructor responsible for training the next generation of Marine snipers. Her combat experience and proven skills made her an invaluable resource for recruits who would soon face their own deployments to dangerous locations around the world. Maria's teaching philosophy emphasized the technical aspects of marksmanship while never losing sight of the human element that separated professional soldiers from mere killers. She taught her students to respect their weapons, to value human life, and to make moral decisions even when those decisions conflicted with orders or expectations. Her classroom instruction was supplemented by stories from her own deployment, illustrating the complex realities of modern warfare and the importance of ethical behavior in combat. The young Marines who passed through Maria's instruction program carried her lessons with them to deployments in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other troubled regions around the world. Many of them would later credit her teaching with helping them make difficult decisions under fire, choosing courses of action that honored both their mission and their humanity. In this way, Maria's influence extended far beyond her own combat service, shaping the character and capabilities of hundreds of Marines who would serve in future conflicts. Years later, when military historians studied the role of women in combat during the Afghanistan conflict, Maria's name would appear prominently in their accounts. Her service record documented not only exceptional marksmanship and tactical skills, but also the kind of moral leadership that defined the finest traditions of American military service. She had proven that gender was irrelevant when it came to protecting American lives and upholding military values. But Maria herself remained characteristically modest about her achievements, always emphasizing the collective nature of military service and the debt she owed to the Marines who had served alongside her. When asked about her legacy, she would simply say that she had done her job to the best of her ability, using the skills and training provided by the Marine Corps to protect her fellow Americans and innocent civilians. The little girl who had learned to shoot in the hills of Texas had become a warrior whose influence would endure long after her own service ended. Maria Elena Santos had proven that courage, skill, and moral integrity knew no gender boundaries, and that the finest traditions of the Marine Corps could be upheld by anyone willing to make the necessary sacrifices. Her story became an inspiration for countless young women who would follow in her footsteps, demonstrating that the path to military excellence was open to all who possessed the dedication to walk it. In the end, Maria's greatest victory was not measured in enemy fighters eliminated or missions accomplished, but in the lives she had saved and the principles she had upheld. She had faced the ultimate test of a warrior's character and emerged with her honor intact, proving that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when destruction was necessary and when mercy was required. This was the legacy of Corporal Maria Elena Santos, the deadliest sniper the Marine Corps never wanted to admit they needed, and the finest Marine they were proud to call their own.